What's up? Hitman's Haven supporters, fans, audience members everywhere. It seems like we've been gone for a little while, and we are back to discuss some of the hot topics that have been floating around social media. And of course, we've had our opinions, and we've been kind of debating back and forth with some of you all, but we want to go over, we just finished our defensive top fives throughout the league. Of course, PFF has dropped a couple of different categories in terms of what they've shared. They have the building the perfect team in each of the divisions. So we'll hit on that a little bit. And then they have the top 10 position units throughout the league. Defensively, at least, the only one it appears that we have showing up is, I think, our secondary. But anyway, we're going to talk about it and kind of see if we agree or disagree or where some of the guys that we had aligned throughout the league in our top fives fit with some of these groups that PFF came up with. So how you doing, man?
Doing good. Definitely, it's been a little bit, obviously, since we talked with Leroy and got to do a lot of those things. But back to it. Almost time for football again.
Yeah, it's well, we got a few weeks, and then of course training camp hits, so we can certainly talk the real live action in terms of what's happening. But we're going to start with this building the perfect NFC North team, and like I said, let's see if we agree with these choices that they made. And if we don't, just kind of where some of these areas don't really align with what you may see. But what they have at quarterback, they have Jordan Love. The running back unit, they chose the Detroit Lions. With the receiving core, they chose the Chicago Bears. And I'm going to remind everybody that in the receiving core, what PFF is using is all the receiving weapons. So although there's a running back group, the running backs, the tight ends, the wide receivers, all of those positions are included in what they chose as their receiving core when they stacked their receiving cores throughout the league. Then offensive line, they have Detroit Lions. The defensive line, they have the Detroit Lions. The linebacker unit, they have the Chicago Bears. And then the secondary, they have the Green Bay Packers. So, T-Man, what do you think? What's there that you can say you understand? You can see what they got, and what's there that seems like need a little more evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as quarterback, I mean, we've heard people say that there wouldn't be many other choices besides Patrick Mahomes and then a couple other coin flips in terms of picking a quarterback league-wide than Jordan where he is right now. So that one seemed like the easiest one, and I mean, for everyone, really. I think O-line, I definitely understand why it was given to Detroit. I think they have the most proven and consistent five, at least dating back to last season. You know, at the very least, they have the single most premier tackle probably of the bunch in Sewell. And then on the other side, they have a great tackle, or at least what's thought of as a high-level tackle. Anytime you have those two shored up, generally your O-line is going to get a lot of respect, and they have good veterans in the middle as well. So I definitely understand that one. I think as far as the linebacker position, when I look at the linebacker groups in the North right now, none of them stand out as like elite units, right? Like the 49ers or the Ravens last year when they had Roquan and Patrick Queen together. So I again get the thought process in terms of none really sticks out as like those two dudes are elite level linebackers. However, the Bears do have two proven veterans who produce. Obviously, they're two very different players in Tremaine Evans and TJ Edwards. But those are two dudes who have been in the league a long time, started a long time, and play well. So not that they're necessarily far and away ahead of any other group in the division, but I'd say they're the two most established starters who can play at a consistent high level. So I'll give them that as well. Other than that, I definitely think there are some debates. I think if you go solely off of 2023 production, I would say the running back room that they picked with the Lions made sense. I think projecting forward, there could be some things to be seen with the room that Green Bay has assembled, having Josh Jacobs, only guy in the division who's led the league in rushing. Also adding in Marshawn Lloyd, who, is a dynamic guy and potentially can add a lot of things that, Aaron Jones did, and even just some own tricks that he has to himself. And potentially a refined and leaned up A.J. Dillon, who could be extremely motivated to get back to some of the production he had earlier on in his career, whether that in the short yardage role or even in some new roles that have been floated around. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition. As far as 2023 production, I understand the running back room being the Lions, but moving forward, I could definitely see there being some debate there, depending on what happens this season.
Yeah. I think out of the groups, of course, that Detroit offensive line is without a doubt, I think, the shoe-in, if you want to have one that you say is an absolute shoe-in. However, the Detroit defensive line, are they trying to say that one elite guy is uplifting everybody else? Like this is how regular the Detroit defensive line is. And because I'm gonna tell you, T, the way when they start doing high level groups and they just name them, I'm not gonna go research. I need to see if anything just pops
to your head
page for me, because you know how much we watch football, and I'm like, I can't even name, besides Hutch, I can't name another difference-making defensive lineman in Detroit. So I have a problem with that. Like I said, it's almost like the two ends of the spectrum for me with Detroit. The offensive line is the shoe-in. The defensive line was a throw-in. I don't even know how they came up with that. In particular, when you look at the one area on our defense that I think you got to say, they threw our secondary on there, and we don't even have a group of four who played together in our secondary, but they put our secondary on this perfect NFC North team. Our defensive line should be on there. We have defensive linemen who we have Rashawn Gary, who is absolutely, everybody can see that he's a difference-making edge, and he's right on the edge of bursting. And the same projection they're making on some of these other ones, I'm not sure how you come off of that one, when the only thing I think that kind of slowed down Rashawn's progress was that ACL. But he still got 9+ sacks even after that. Now, I've always looked at ACLs, T, as at least 18 months. I understand guys come back faster, but they're not the same guy. That guy that's back out there in 10 months, that's not the guy who was before he got hurt. The guy who before he got hurt is the 18-month guy. So what we are about to see, I think, is the real rejuvenated, ready to roll, high-level producing Rashawn Gary. And then you go inside with Kenny, and come on now, what other defensive tackle are you taking out of the NFC North and saying, I'm definitely going to put that guy ahead of Kenny Clark? I don't have that guy. And then our young guys were balling. Like we got young dudes who are wrecking shop up there in terms of causing havoc on the inside, rotating. Slayton is a big athletic guy who, although he is kind of quote unquote a starter with the old defense we ran, we're not sure what the setup is going to be under this new defense. Is it going to be Kenny with Devontae, who's playing the shade and the 3 technique, and then of course outside with Rashawn and Preston, or the rotation with Van Ness? Who are they going to be? All I know is that our 4 guys and the other 2 guys who are second years, they probably are going to be able to rotate inside and outside. We get those are pretty good damn pass rushing dudes. So I just don't see how the Detroit Lions defensive line got on there. And quite frankly, our secondary, I certainly can appreciate it, them putting us on there because of projection, because it seems they want to project a lot, because they also put the Chicago Bears receiving core on there that hadn't played a snap together, and one of the guys is a rookie, hadn't even played a snap in the NFL, and they're playing with a rookie quarterback. But Our secondary, we have a guy, coming off of an injury who's had kind of 2 years where people are questioning everything about what he's about. So he's got to come back and improve himself. Of course, our two elite level guys in terms of where they rate around the league in X, who we just signed over from the Giants, and then Ja, and then question marks. So I'm not sure how you put our secondary on there. And shoot, this is where the Bears should have been on there. The Bears probably should have been on there with the secondary. I mean, I don't know how they seem like they just kind of threw things on there, and it's I guess it's worthy of debate. The only other quarterback that in the division, obviously, that could have been a consideration would have been Goff, and he just wasn't on Jordan's level last year if you just go head to head. So I think Jordan was one of the easy ones, but that was just a single position, and the rest of these jokers are grouped, so we got to look at multiple people. But remembering kind of where we were with the because I want to make sure we get some concentrate on these defenses, because we just finished our top 5 in all these different categories. So now I'm going to these top 10 positionally, and these are throughout the league. So this is not just looking at the NFC North now. Defenses throughout the league, and remembering how we did from a top 5 standpoint within those position groups. Starting with the top 10 defensive lines throughout the league. Number 1, they have the New York Jets. Number 2, they have the San Francisco 49ers. Number 3, Philadelphia Eagles. Number 4, Detroit Lions. Number 5, Cleveland Browns. Number 6, Dallas Cowboys. Number 7, Indianapolis Colts. Number 8, Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 9, Las Vegas Raiders. Number 10, the Houston Texans. So, again, very interesting. I mean, they have Detroit number 4 in the whole damn league. So, I mean, what do you see there that stands out?
So, I actually remember the guy who produced last year, who I think is part of the reason they're bumping Detroit up, is Aleem McNeil, the defensive tackle. He played really well a lot of the year. But again, I had to look his name up to remember. And that's not to say that, I remember every guy ever. But generally, when guys perform, we just know who they are. We're not, just random fans who know the guys who make it in the Pro Bowl. That's who the fans know. But he did play well last year, so I'll give him credit for that. But I still don't see how Detroit would be at 4. Now, same way I was talking about, having a pair of offensive tackles. If you have a pair of elite to high level good edge rushers, I don't see how you're not higher in the top 10. And specifically, I'd be referencing the Steelers and Houston. Houston just got Danielle Hunter to go on the opposite side of Will Anderson. Now, Danielle Hunter is like 15 sacks plus every single year.
Right.
And you put him on the other side of Will Anderson, so that means one of them is going to be singled up every play. That group is going to be higher than 10 just off of that alone. And they have an aggressive, play caller. So those guys are going to make an impact. I couldn't exactly tell you right now who all their interior defensive linemen are, but those 2 dudes alone are going to make some plays. So I would have them higher than 10. The Steelers, you're probably not going to find a better pair than TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. I mean, that's guaranteed probably 33 plus sacks every year that they're together. And they just make all kinds of plays. And they still have Cam Hayward in the interior. I don't care how old he is. The dude is a dog, and he gets the job done. So I would have them, both of those groups, higher as well. I think my number 1 would be San Francisco, just because they just have a ridiculous amount of guys at the top, and even their rotational players. You just don't get much better than that. And I'd probably have the Eagles sitting right behind them. The thing with me for the Jets is they definitely have, obviously they have Quinnen Williams, and they got some other high-level pieces. But as of right now, Hassan Reddick I don't even think he's stepped foot in the Jets building. So I can't necessarily count him as a Jet just yet until all of that situation with him being traded there and not communicating, not showing up to OTAs. I'm not going to give them credit for a guy who hasn't stepped in the building, thus far into the off season. So if he comes in and they're able to get all that situated, they're definitely still a high-level unit. But they also lost, man, what was that guy's name who rotated in for them at defensive end? He finally went and got paid somewhere else. Undersized defensive end pass rusher that they had for a while. And he would always have some good sacks. I can't remember his name, but I know he ended up leaving in free agency. So they lost some production there. Hopefully, I guess they would replace it with Reddick. But San Francisco will be my one. I would have Philly behind them. Their group is ridiculous as well, and a lot of young guys. And I think just in terms of just total depth with interior pass rushing, edge rushing, I think they're not giving the Packers the benefit of the doubt for the caliber of guys they have, especially if those guys continue to ascend the way they very well could.
Yeah. I mean, it's just when you look at the order that they have it just seems to me like these are just out of order. Like, how the hell is Pittsburgh all the way down at 8? I mean, what? I mean, they already got the 2 outside pass rushers that you can't block. Like, you can't.
Exactly.
So obviously they're going to try to slide protection over to TJ, and then of course Highsmith makes them pay. I mean, so I think this is just something to where when I look at the list, I mean, you see the names, like you said, you can see the big names, and you know why San Fran, you know why the Jets, you know why Philly. I understand what you're saying about McNeil, but I mean, Detroit.
No, he's not.
I don't know why they are at 4. I don't. Cleveland, of course. Look, Cleveland all around. I mean, they just got they got some dogs. They got one of the best defenses, period, and it starts up front. So I mean, they gotta be in the mix. And
Bryce Huff, and he went to Philly. So he went to Philly. So that definitely puts Philly above New York, because he's a guy.
Yep. If you're looking at what have you done for me lately? Now, the interesting thing about looking at Dallas on here, Dallas just got their ass ran through like a hot knife through butter in the playoffs, and you telling me they got top 10 defensive line in the NFL and all of the NFL, and they just going 100% blame all of that happened in the playoffs on the linebackers, I guess. Okay. So again, I think my 2 biggest gripes at the bottom are Pittsburgh and the Texans. I think they should be higher. I don't know how they're going to be 8 and 10 and have some of the groups you have ahead of them, Dallas, Detroit ahead of them. I mean, the top 3 ain't going nowhere. I mean, you could probably get, Pittsburgh up there close. Obviously, Cleveland, again, like I said, they're gonna be in the mix. I mean, I think they could be top 4. I mean, they're at 5, so they're not far off. Indianapolis is solid. I think they're in the right place. They're not any higher than 7. So like I said, the ones that maybe I just need to go back and watch some more film, but I don't know how Dallas is a top 10 defensive line. I don't know how Detroit is a top 4 defensive line. I don't see that. We know what they're doing with Las Vegas because, with Christian coming in there as well, and he, is one of those pass rushers from the inside. So you're adding to something that's probably going to release Max. I mean, you thought he was Mad Max before. It's probably going to get real funky in Las Vegas for them. So, like I said, for the defensive lines with me, I think a couple of them need to be a little bit higher. One of them I don't even think is supposed to be on the list. And then, 2 of them I don't even think is supposed to be on the list. So that one got interesting. The next group, top 10 linebacker units. Now this one I think is the top 2. I think you and I will pretty much agree that they're the top 2. I probably would have them in a different order. So number 1 is the New York Jets. Number 2 is San Francisco 49ers. 3 is Chicago Bears. 4 New England Patriots. 5 New York Giants. 6 Baltimore Ravens. 7 Jacksonville Jaguars. 8 Cleveland Browns. 9 New Orleans Saints. And 10 the Minnesota Vikings. Wait a minute. Who are the linebackers for the Minnesota Vikings that would make them a top 10 unit?
So they
Or
just
are they
brought
considering
Blake Cashman.
McCallus?
They just brought
Or
they wouldn't be considering
that's
Mattel.
who. That's right.
I
That's
think
right.
so. Yeah. So Cashman went there. So I think he would be part of that group. I'm trying to think who they had last year that stayed. I mean, nobody jumps off of the table coming to mind, honestly. I'm trying to think who else would they have? Oh, so I mean the rookie Ivan Pace played really well. But I mean I wouldn't necessarily say he's a top 10 guy. I would say, I'm wondering where are the Bills? Unless you're just assuming Matt Milano is going to, playing really poorly coming off of injury. He's a top linebacker, and Terrell Bernard was a first-year starter playing pretty well last year. I would have expected them to be at the very least in there, but definitely above of someone like Minnesota. I mean, I'm trying to think. As far as the Jaguars, I think it's definitely projecting an improvement from Devin Lloyd. Foye Oluokun is obviously a really high-level player that we talked about. But I don't know if we've necessarily seen that type of play from Devin Lloyd just yet. Now, the one that probably is the most interesting to me right now would be the Giants. I do like Micah McFadden, and obviously Okereke came in there and was a really, really good player for them last year, but I just don't know if that's a fifth best unit in the league.
That's kind of high.
Type of unit. So I definitely would have the Niners flipped over the Jets. I mean, Fred Warner is the best in the league. We've talked about that, and there's really no dispute about it. And even with Dre Greenlaw hurt, they signed Devondre, who, we know what he's capable of at his peak. I don't know if Dre will be back this season, but simply off of Fred alone and knowing that it's primarily a 2-linebacker league, I would have them at number 1. The Jets, solid 2. CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams are definitely 2 of the best in the game that we've talked about extensively. And I think the Bears, are really, really high right now, in one part because the Ravens tandem got broken up, so that knocks Roquan because they don't know who he'll be paired with next season. I think the plan is probably the draft pick Trenton Simpson, but that remains to be seen, obviously. So that leaves up a single spot, and then you had some other guys just leave at other places, like most of Cleveland's linebackers outside of JOK left in free agency. Like Taki joined New England, I think, and they still have Jawan Bentley. Jelani Tavai just got paid, I think, a couple of days ago. So the linebacker rankings
paid him.
Yeah, so the linebacker rankings are definitely a little interesting right now, and some guys will definitely have to prove themselves in terms of an overall linebacker core. And I think the Chiefs and the Bills not being on there at all, I think, what's his name? Nick Bolton for the Chiefs, I think, is an extremely underrated guy. And even though they lost Willie Gay, I think Tranquil played really well for them last year in rotation, and that's why they were okay with letting Willie go.
Tranquil outplayed Gay because he was in there for Bolton. He outplayed Gay.
So Tranquil's always been impactful. He's just hardly healthy, at least thus far in his career. That's kind of what's hurt him more than his production. So if that unit remains healthy, I think they're a top 10 unit. And I think the Bills, as long as Matt Milano returns to form, are certainly a top 10 units. Not that the PFF list is terrible, but there's definitely a lot of guessing going on with that unit. And probably a large part of their rankings is guys that aligned with their grading system, which we kind of already talked about, is not an end-all, be-all when it comes to understanding what's impacting the game and what's really happening.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I think, as I've shared, for PFF, I'm not going to go on a PFF rant, but if you're grading a player and a play, how we did it, even as a player when they hand out our grading sheets, even the people who did just plus minus or, outstanding play, however they grade it. Well, it starts with the play. I mean, did you get a MA on the play? MA on the play. So if you don't even know what the play is, how you know if the person got an MA on the play? You have no idea. They missed the assignment. I don't know, because I don't know what the play was. So you can't even start with the very first thing that we're going to grade on the play. Well, I shouldn't even say that, because then you got to go line up. You don't know where he's supposed to be lined up. So we grade that too. We grade how you line up, your assignment, you know. So all of these things that you don't even know, and I think it's even more important at the linebacker position. But at the top of this thing, like you say, those jokers ball so well, even if they are missing assignments, you'll go with what they got. They just make plays all over the field. And, you know, I'm going to tell you, I think San Fran is solidly at number one, even if Dre doesn't come back at all next year. Because if you take Devondre and you put him beside Fred, man, you take all of that other crap off of Devondre and you just going to let him be that big old tall athlete running around out there? Shoot, I'll take that. I think he's going to probably have that comeback year that he's been looking for, because I think he kind of let the Green Bay thing get in his head when it came to him being frustrated with the injury thing, with the defense. I mean, all the things that we already know about, we don't have to rehash. But when you go to a system that fits you, fits the type of player you are, and you don't have to be the lead dog, you're not the one calling the defense. You actually get to play the Robin to a Batman who's already in place. I think, like I said, I think that they are a solid number one. And the Jets, when I say a solid number one, I'm talking about the Jets are in number two, but they overlap. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like the San Fran is number one, and then the Jets are like 1B-ish. Like they just right under there. They overlap a little bit. I'm not sure how the Bears get at 3. They're good linebackers. I'm not necessarily an Edmonds fan. I see the athleticism, but you know, when you have a player who is literally the opposite of what the NFL claims to want in a linebacker, who, in my opinion, outplays Tremaine like tremendously. Like, it's not even close to watch TJ Edwards out there on the field and then to watch Edmonds. I mean, it looks like one guy knows exactly what he's doing and the other guy is an athlete who makes plays sometimes. I'm not sure how they get to be number 3 in the league. And like you said, as far as New England, I mean, New England is just kind of one of those teams, and they probably are in about the right place because of some of the issues that are happening with the other ones below them. But you just kind of got solid dudes. I mean, you got the true old school linebackers across the board in New England. That's how they want to play. I mean, they got the 250-pound plus dudes who, you know, they bring the wood, and they've done well. You know, they've had guys like Tavai who kind of revived his career because, you know, I guess he kind of blew out there in Detroit. I mean, they drafted him and he was supposed to, you know, come in and do well, but somehow, you know, fell out of favor, and he, you know, he's done well. Like you said, he got paid a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. And then the only one, like I said, on the list that kind of just threw me for a loop of the linebackers was the Vikings. You know, I think I like Detroit's linebackers better than I do the Vikings linebackers. I don't know. It'll be interesting. A lot of projecting, like you said, a lot of projecting as to what it's going to look like. You have anything else with the linebackers?
No, I think you hit it. Definitely in terms of just on paper, I like Detroit's as well. I mean, you have Alex, who's been a starter basically his entire career, and when he's not hurt, he's playing well. Not necessarily the greatest, but a guy who's going to make plays. And Jack Campbell, you know, a guy who potentially can do everything. This will probably be the year they expect more out of him. And then their rotational guys behind that, Barnes and those other guys, have all proven to be solid players at the very least. So in terms of a total core, yeah, I definitely like them over right now. And, you know, like I said, Buffalo and Kansas City would be the groups that I would move up for sure, you know, to start the rankings. And then we'll see
that aren't on here.
From there. Exactly.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. I don't know how you can have Matt Milano rated the 3rd best linebacker in the league and that don't have their group on here. That don't even make sense to me, because there are only 2 on the field 90% of the time. So you got the third best linebacker, and he doesn't lead one of the top 10 units in the league. This might be one of them cases where they kind of trip themselves up, I think. But we've seen that before, so we can kind of. So the next group
it is with them.
Is the secondaries. This is the last one. So now, the top 10 secondaries in the National Football League. Number 1, the Jets. Number 2, San Francisco 49ers. Number 3, the Bills. Number 4, the Ravens. 5, the Dolphins. 6, the Browns. 7, the Seahawks. 8, the Green Bay Packers. 9, the Kansas City Chiefs. And 10, the New Orleans Saints. Interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, this is a very interesting ranking for a couple of reasons. The first one that makes me go, is the Bills. And while I like their corner group, Rasul, Benford, and Teron Johnson, that's a solid group. But we're talking about a unit that lost Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Now,
both of the safeties.
Yeah, I mean, I know they have Taylor Rapp, and he's a solid player. You know, I think he won a Super Bowl when he was in LA. Having 2 question marks in terms of can they bring the production that Hyde and Poyer brought for a very long time, there's no way I have that unit at 3. So I think 1 and 2 are correct. I think the Jets have a great repertoire of corners. I think they brought Chuck Clark back after he didn't play last season, and you know we saw Tony Adams, a guy who I played with at Illinois, earned that starting role last year. And really, as the season went on, he just played better and better. So I think it makes a lot of sense that they're at 1. The Niners get Talanoa Hufanga back. Travarius Ward, you know, probably had his best season of his career. It makes sense for them to be at 2. But I think, you know, the Ravens, they would have to be my 3, especially over the Bills. I think the Bills would probably be somewhere at like 11 to 14, to be honest, just because not knowing who either of your safeties are, it's very hard for me to say you're a top 10 unit. And while they have solid corners, none of them are Pro Bowl, you know, all pro level players, at least right now. So I would have the Ravens higher, and then I think the Dolphins probably would move up as well because they have Jalen Ramsey. Hopefully he's healthy. They stole Poyer from the Bills, and then they have one of the best safeties in the league as well in Javon Holland. So that's a really good unit as well. I think they would probably be taking that. What would that be? The 4th spot. Other than that, though, I mean the other teams, it makes sense. The Browns have a really solid unit. The Seahawks, I think, just have a unit that has so much potential, right? Like, can Tariq maximize his potential? Right. I mean, we already told you how good Devin Witherspoon is. He could arguably be the best DB in the league if he's healthy and puts it all together. So, you know, I'm gonna definitely say that the Seahawks could be one to watch if they can just shore up those 2 corner spots with Devin and Tariq being, you know, the caliber of players that they seem to be able to get to. Then that's a tough unit to deal with.
Yeah, you're looking at, again, I can see where there's some projection coming in some of the places, but no more than, I don't know what they're doing with Buffalo at 3. I mean, look, when you look at how they were playing before Rasul got there and then after, to tell you how much they needed Rasul, and I would say Rasul is certainly bordering on all pro level play, but he also gets beat sometimes in a different manner than what you see a player like Sauce or Surtain, or, you know, if Ramsey, for instance, if Jalen Ramsey gets beat, he's guessed, because he'll do that sometimes. You know, he's guessed at something. Like there will be times where we just we don't even know what Sewell was doing when he gets beat. He's literally running with the guy, and the guy he gets open, and you're like, okay, could he not, you know, make that cut? You know, what happened? So yeah, he can't be a factor that you're telling me puts y'all at 3, and then that means you got him ahead of the Ravens, who have 2 All-Pros in their secondary. You got them ahead of the Dolphins, who pretty much same thing, got 2. You got them ahead of Cleveland, who probably had the best 3 cornerbacks. If you look at the trifecta, you put all 3 of them together, they might have the best 3 in the league. I don't think either of them individually is the best their position. Like, they don't have the best outside. They don't have the best slot. But if you put the 2 outsides with the slot together, I think that's the best 3 together. And the Seahawks, again, back to what you said, you're talking about, shoot, man, look, if Tariq just plays like he did his rookie year for the rest of his career, I mean, he might break the interception record. If he could just get that back going, because right now, and again, we hear him talk about everybody else, and we've heard some of the negative spins they put on Tariq because people think he got sat down last year or whatever. But with all the talk, he's still the number 1 man cover corner in the entire National Football League. So it don't get any better than that. So if you telling me this guy right here, if you put him in man, which if I was a coach, I would do like they used to do with Deion. I would say, hey, Tariq, you go over there and you play man. And then the rest of us, we're going to play defense, the defense. That's literally almost how defenses were called for Deion Sanders. And the reason I know that is because we had a Deion Sanders type guy in Kansas City that we did the same thing with sometime. And by the name of Dale Carter. We literally did the same thing. Dale ain't even come to the huddle. He just you cover number 1 on your side, man to man. We're going to run the rest of the defense over here. And that's the type of player, when you put him in man coverage, that Tariq is. Witherspoon, my goodness. I mean, he came in like you and I thought he would. And he can only get better from there. That dude he's a monster. I did want to talk about Kansas City because they only lost Snead. And Snead was a hell of a player, though. So you say, okay, they lose Snead, they stay in the top 10? Yes, they actually do, because you can remember when we talked about the corners, and I mentioned this guy. I mentioned Josh as one of my honorable mentions because Josh ended up being another dude very similar to Tariq. If you put him in man, your quarterback is going to have a hard day. Thankfully, Christian gave him a hard day when he was in man on him. So we're going to take that win for our team. But in terms of his ability as a player, I think he immediately just slides into, one of the starting corner positions. On the other side is where they already had Watson. And they came in you're talking about one of the youngest secondaries, in the league. I think all of those guys who will be starting in the secondary next year, except for, I think, Reed, so the strong safety, because the free safety will be back, the one from last year. But I think they drafted that safety from, Washington State, the young guy. So they might be planning on, kind of getting him ready to take over strong safety from, Reed. And then
Justin
McDuffie.
Reed.
Yeah, Justin Reed. And McDuffie is the number 1 slot corner in the National Football League. So I don't know. They might be a little low. Now that I think about it. But I don't have as much of a problem with this list. I did say, like I said, with Green Bay, shoot, I like seeing us on lists, but I'm having a hard time understanding how we got on this one when we only have 2 guys that we can, unless they're just saying they're so high, they're so good, our 2 that we know can do the thing, that they move us up like that. I mean, I appreciate it. And I really think that these young safeties are going to ball. So that can also be a projection as well, looking at those safeties. Because I don't think that the way that lineup is going to shake out, I don't think people realize what it might look like. I think, because I hear a lot of people calling the positions these guys are going to have. I don't think it's going to look like a lot of people think it's going to look in Green Bay secondary. So it's going to be interesting. They drafted a whole bunch of safeties and slot guys. So we're going to see. We're going to see how this thing goes. So,
if anything,
when you look at these lists, what you say? No, I was just saying, when you look at these lists, are there any that just way off from where you're looking at with your guys?
The defensive line one probably shocked me the most. Outside of this Buffalo Bills secondary being at 3, that was the single probably most shocking, just single grade of them all. But the defensive line one just, kind of kind of blew me away when you're talking about elite pairings in Pittsburgh, not even in the top 5, not even really sniffing the top 5. You're talking about, I mean, call it what it is, an elite pairing in Houston at 10, and then you have a one-man crew at 4 in Detroit. To be honest, it just didn't really make a lot of sense. So there was definitely some shuffling that needed to be done in the defensive line one. And then the secondary one with Buffalo at 3. Like if this had been going into 2023, I guess I would understand it even more than now. Now, obviously going into 2023, they didn't have Rasul, but their corner pairings going into last year with Poyer and with Hyde, you can justify that being a top 5 defensive back group, considering how they played. Looking at it right now without those 2 veterans, they're just not that group. And I think a lot of the top secondaries in the league have been shaken up in terms of guys just going everywhere. Really, outside of San Francisco, New York, and then the Ravens, everyone else has really shuffled their deck. Like the Bucks have shuffled their lineup. Guys moved around. Kansas City moved around. Philly, who had what was considered a high-level unit a couple of years ago and got torched last year, they've really revamped everything going into this year. Yeah. The top secondary groups kind of remain to be seen. Even Detroit had to retool at the corner position. For the most part, starting over. They have some guys who potentially could be really good. Obviously, they have Brian Branch, who was excelling. And kind of what I was going to get at is, if anyone kind of has an idea of what's going to happen in Green Bay at that slot corner position, look at what the Lions did with Brian Branch, who was a safety, spent almost all of his time in the slot, and in his very first NFL game made a massive impact playing in the slot. It's a unique role, and it requires a unique skill set and mentality from any DB to be able to do what is asked in that spot. So, like you said, they drafted a lot of safeties. This is a new defense. Can Keyshawn find an expanded role there going into this year? There's a lot of options, at the very least, for Green Bay with that spot, and we'll see what they're able to do with it.
Yeah, that was, I think, the area, and you hit on it in terms of where the interesting conversation is going to be as we kind of see these guys line up in training camp. But I mentioned it when we were talking about the DBs. He wasn't he didn't make the list, but Brian Branch, I believe, from the standpoint of just holistic skills at the slot position, I believe he's right behind McDuffie, and he's just a different entity that's behind McDuffie. McDuffie is just on a different level when it comes to coverage. So when it's kind of unfair to compare him when you're saying, okay, this guy right here can really run with anybody anywhere, and this guy right here is more of he's going to be physical, he's going to be tough and close, but they need to get that ball out of there or it can get ugly the further, it works its way up the field. But when you're talking about a slot playing in the box and playing physical, man, that dude is, hey, we have one of those. Let me just put it that way. We drafted one of those. So it's going to be interesting to see what this thing looks like as I said, as they line up. And as we said, as it relates to the defense in Green Bay, we don't know what Hafley saw on film from our guys last year, because we all complained about what was going on with the defense last year and the year before, because they just did not look like they were set up to succeed in a manner that matched their skills. And if Hafley sees something that we don't know, because again, they have things that we don't have, then hey, could very well be a role there for Nixon in that defense that we aren't familiar with. We'll see. I still stand on, I don't like guys being put in positions to make them look bad. Putting him in the position to cover man-to-man made him look bad last year. And so that, to me, is not where his strength lies, and I would hope that's not what we're going to attempt to do again with him this year. So before we close it out, man, what else is it that we might have missed?
As far as the defensive rankings, I think we talked about it a lot. I think just to go back to the beginning, and the controversy with the Bears wide receiver group, ranking them as the top unit in the division. I think what people don't understand, and it is particularly with two different position groups, with wide receivers and defensive line. People say, oh, well, y'all are talking about wide receiver 4 and 5 and 6. Those guys play 20, 25, 30 snaps a game. Defensive line, same thing. Guys are playing high volume of snaps. If there's 70 snaps in a game, your wide receiver 4 and 5 are probably playing wide receiver 4, 25 snaps. Wide receiver 5, 15, 16 snaps. That's normal. Just ask yourself, could you run 7, 8, 40, 50-yard sprints in a row, full speed every time? Absolutely not. Well, just because they're the fastest dudes in the world doesn't mean that they can do it over and over and over again. They get a break. So when you're talking about receiving cores and you're talking about pass rushing groups, the guys who are the 4, the 5, and the 6 matter. That's why they dress, because half the time, not all those guys even play on special teams. When you're looking at a core, that's what makes a difference. Think about the Chiefs. Outside of Travis Kelce, there wasn't a single wide receiver 1 out there. Rashee Rice, yeah, he was at times dynamic. But the guys who made plays in the Super Bowl were Mecole Hardman, who, mind you, they traded away and the Jets cut mid-season. And he wasn't even rostered for the Chiefs until the end of the season and into the playoffs. He made the game-winning play. Justin Watson, who, if anyone looked at Justin Watson, you wouldn't take him over probably a single receiver in Green Bay or in Chicago. So that stuff matters. It's depth. It's how do those guys impact the game? How can they fill a specific role? Whether it's, are they comfortable playing in the slot? Can they at X and block in the run game? All of those things matter. I mean, obviously not when we're talking about just the pass game, but when we're talking about what a receiving core is and what conversely on defense, what a pass rush unit is. So, that'll go over a lot of people's head because they think it's Madden and every play I throw the ball to my best receiver, but that's just not how the game actually works. And that's why the best teams are the ones who can throw the ball to whoever and move the ball down the field. That's the name of the game.
That's it. I mean, and depth matters. I mean, it literally is the difference between the top college football teams and everybody else. Like, people wonder why teams look like they're kind of hanging in there for a little while. They're like, man, they hanging in there with Alabama. Then, next thing you know, that old bear falls on them, and they realize they got frontline players playing every snap. Alabama has literally been rotating 3 deep on y'all the whole game. So they still are fresh and balling. And there is nobody in the NFL besides Max Crosby who appeared to play every damn snap. Like, almost everybody has had somebody give them a blow where they actually can come back in and be fresh at the moment where they're needed most. And of course, then there are also just some natural rotations in play because you have some units that are set up to play together strategically. But that's still understanding that you need to be at your best for as long as you can for the full 60 minutes, which in reality ends up being about 3 hours and something from when you started that game until when it ends. And in order to do that at your best, having quality depth beyond you keep on hollering about our top 3 guys, one of which in terms of that receiving core hasn't taken one NFL snap, not a single one. So to project that person into a position that moves them ahead of multiple established groups that have already proven that they can do it in the NFL and do it in a manner that's better than the collective of people that have played in Chicago in the history of the organization. They literally have never done what Green Bay's young first and second year receivers did last year from Chicago Bears. So yeah, that one I think is kind of one of those things where it's great conversation, but they're gonna have to show that on the field before they can get that title. That you can't just pop somebody in a position and tell us that they're the best. That doesn't jive. They're not for me. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and close it out for this episode of Hitman's Haven. And again, we thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, subscribe, share. We're on YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We certainly appreciate you all. We're looking forward to a great season coming up, especially for our Green Bay Packers. And until next time, as always, go Pack, go.